the Sydney Roundworld.
Hello, hello, good evening, hello, and welcome. Hello, thank you. Very kind. Welcome everyone to this edition of the TooFatLardies Oddcast. And as ever, I am joined by my two great friends in the world of Lard. Neither of them are April Fools, but they're both here with me. It's Nick Skinner and Richard Clark. Guys, it's been a long time since we sat down at Lard Island and recorded an oddcast. What on earth has been going on?
It's frightening, isn't it? Do you know what? We haven't recorded an oddcast since before I went to Australia in January. I think we
Wow.
recorded it on about the 2nd of January and talked about, I listened to it in preparation for this to remind me who you were. And and we were talking about Christmas presents and what we'd had for Christmas. So I feel terribly guilty. It's been a phenomenally busy time. Sid, I know you've been busy with work, and Chain of Command 2 has kept me burning the midnight oil and then burning the early morning oil as well. So sorry, listeners, we've let you down a bit, but we won't be doing it again because we've learnt our lesson, and that's the main thing.
So not so much of an oddcast, more of a Christian religious festival cast at the moment. Then one at Christmas, one at
Yeah,
Easter.
what at Easter. Right, well, you'll be handing out the Maundy money then, will you, Sid?
I'm de I'm desperately trying to remember my primary school religious festivals as to what comes after Easter. If we have any vicars or priests listening, can we all apologise? Because it must be Annunciation. I think it's Annunciation, but yes, I'm very sorry about that, listeners. But we've not just been sitting around eating Easter eggs, have we? Because we've been to places. I mean, you mentioned Australia, but that's not just the only place we've been to. Well, you've been to Arnhem, haven't you, Rich? And
Yeah,
we've all been to Salute. Ah,
we have. A bit of a charabanc, lard on tour. But yeah, I mean, first of all, I really must mention Australia because I went down to CanCon there and had a fabulous time there. Really, really great show and a really, really great crowd of guys and gals having a fabulous time and really flying the flag for Lard. The good news then, we got our Australian representative there who were running the show there, Battlefield Accessories, who were selling a full range of Lardy products. So that was great to see. And since then, we've got our North American representatives in place who are selling our products throughout the North America. And, if you're in Canada, you can order from us or you can order for them. And that's Age of Glory Wargaming over there in Maryland. So we're with those two and Caravanserai in the European Union. We're pretty much catering for all tastes, I would say.
you're covering the whole globe, if not yet the solar system. Maybe,
That's
maybe,
next.
maybe there's a place on one of those rockets with Katy Perry to act as some form of ambassador for us.
Yeah, what's the tariff, Rich, on Chain of Command and I ain't been shot, mum? 120%, 140%,
It,
130%?
it changes every day. So my advice is buy now while it's cheap, and then come back and buy again when it's expensive. But just keep buying. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what the tariffs are on it. I don't know how we're going to be affected by tariffs. I'm about to send a box of stock across, so we'll see what happens there. Who
See if
knows?
it
The
gets
world
there.
of politics is well worth avoiding at the moment, isn't it?
Mm.
Well, from politics to perhaps things which are nearer home. We've been to Lardy Games Days as well. I went to Hearts of Lard, which was in Hertfordshire in March, which was a really great day's gaming. And a lot of the games which we saw there were being sort of prepped for things later in the year, but also Joe's amazing game of the Battle of Con, and he was playing Chain of Command 2, I think, at Hearts of Lard, and then he'd carefully evolve that into What's a Tanker at Salute. So that was really memorable, very, very dramatic sort of looking game. Richard,
Yeah,
you
I
were a fan.
really must give a huge shout out to Joe Bilton for his game at Salute, because he worked like a dervish for
Yeah.
the whole day. I mean, he was busier than a one-armed paper hanger with crabs. There was nothing that man, literally having to work the whole time. So it full marks to Joe for what he did there. And what I thought was slightly disappointing was he didn't win an award, because the game was spectacular. I have never seen a game quite like it in terms of size, but in terms of the number of buildings. There must have been 200 buildings on there. And when you would do 200 buildings, I would just toss it up with a yard broom. But he hadn't. He'd put all the care and detail into every single building to make them an individual masterpiece. So a big shout out for Joe. You might not have won an award from the Warlords, but I think you captured all our hearts with that fabulous game, mate.
I have to endorse that. And what I would say, from being neighbours to Joe at that event with our table, was the youth that were attracted to the game as well. And he was entertaining people of all ages, but notably younger gamers. I mean, there were kids around there enjoying the game, and the old graying of the hobby issue was mentioned a number of times, and I just didn't see it. And I didn't see it not just around Joe's table, but I didn't see it at Salute either. I thought Salute was really vibrant, really filled with a real cross section of people from the hobby and historical hobby and non-historical hobby as well.
Yeah.
The footfall apparently was amazing. It was a really, really busy show. Some of the logistics behind the kind of trader side of it, there's always work to do, and that's the difficult part about being in a big venue with a third party organization involved. It's kind of geared up for the logistics of Formula One on tour, and not for a kind of a load of cottage industries turning up with all their gear. But the event itself was really good fun and great to talk to so many people. And the interest around the table, the Lard Zone was brilliant. Mark Backhouse was there with his 2 mil strength and honor game. There was Chris Brown down the other end, because Dave Brown had a better offer. Apparently he wasn't there on the day, but Chris was running a game of, well, I think it was GDA, but you know what, I don't think I actually saw it, because I didn't get more than 10 feet from the table all day.
Dave was making a celebrity appearance at the Sunny View retirement home for elderly ladies, so couldn't make it. But Christopher was there flying the flag for Riser Express with a great game of GDA, which was looking fantastic. And what you were saying about the greying of the hobby, actually, it's the circle of life, isn't it? We've got young people coming through, and they're very, very visible now. I think most people, when they talk about the growing of the hobby, are people our age, and the bit of the hobby that's growing is when we look in the bloody mirror.
Yeah.
We're the ones growing. People have been talking about this since I was 11 years old. The first War Games magazine I ever bought was bemoaning the fact that the hobby was greying and it was going to die out. And I remember thinking, I've only just started and it's all going to end. Well, it hasn't. That's 50 years later. So I think that's a load of old codswallop. And but it is good to see young people looking for an alternative to computer-based games. Those Xbox type stuff. Because the social aspect of tabletop wargaming is a huge factor, and one of the reasons we all love it. We're all great mates because we started gaming round a table together. And that's a really positive thing, which sitting at a console with your Xbox doesn't really replicate.
I think it's a really good point, isn't it? The fact that probably when we first started, we thought wargaming was just primarily perhaps all about gaming, maybe even competitive gaming, or at least trying to win. But I think over the years, the social aspect of gaming has been far more important in my life and probably in everyone's life. It's more of a social sort of experience in a lot of ways with a game, which is obviously part of central of that social experience.
It's like rugby. The most important thing about rugby is the beer afterwards, and it's the same with wargaming.
It's Very true. Well, one of the things which is a common thread, or at least has been for the last 10 or so years, has been the rules that you both have been designing and evolving and bringing to new editions, where more and more people play the game and you get different ideas, and perhaps your views on certain historical events might have changed or evolved throughout that time. So one of the things you've been working on is Chain of Command 2. And I know everyone would be interested to know, how is that coming along?
Well, funnily enough, I made a big announcement on the Chain of Command Facebook group last night. We're right at the point now where we're going through the final proofread. We've got three of our most arduous proofreaders working away on it, and but we're literally at a point now where it's gone out to the broader proofreading groups. They've come back. We're just doing the final run through. The layout is complete. I actually had a day yesterday doing some work on the cover and the inside front cover and the credits and the index, which really is, I'm getting an end of term feel about this, to be honest with you, which is a little bit early. But I ordered 5,000 quid's worth of envelopes yesterday, which nearly made my heart stop. But yeah, it's really good. We've got a projected date for the rules and all the different bundles being available on the website, which is going to be the 5th or 6th of May. Then we are going to release on Wednesday. Publication date is Wednesday, the 28th of May. We didn't do it on a Monday because it's a public holiday, bank holiday here. But we are going to have a special advanced get your hands on this bundle for people going to Partisan on Sunday the 18th of May. So if you advance order to pick up at Partisan, you'll save on post and you'll get your mitts on my bits earlier than you would otherwise have done. That could be our new strapline. So yeah, really exciting. I mean, I'm absolutely buzzing with excitement, to be honest with you. I couldn't sleep last night because I'm so excited about where Chain of Command has got to. I'm like an 8-year-old waiting for Father Christmas to arrive, but he didn't come.
We what's the word? We demoed it at Salute. So our game at Salute was not participation like it normally is. Well, not in the same way as it normally is anyway. But what we were doing was demoing Chain of Command 3, giving people a chance to see some of the new mechanisms and how they worked, and how really what's happened. I think, Rich, one of the biggest developments for me in Chain of Command 2 is the idea that, you're never there's no downtime as a player. Even when your opponent is taking his phase, there's always a chance for you to do stuff and be involved, more so now than in the previous edition. I think that's probably the biggest thing that I would say, in the overall summary of changes. But there's lots of other good stuff in there, and I
Yeah,
think
that was
you've done
core.
some reviews on that elsewhere, I know.
Yeah, that was core to what I was attempting to do, was the fact that how do we make this a bit more like a video game where there's never any downtime? How do we make it a bit more interactive so that you're always involved, you've always got decisions to make even when it's not your phase of play. And that was the first and foremost design objective. And I'm really pleased with where we've got with that. And it's not, there are no fundamental changes. This is evolution, not revolution.
Mm.
But and all that old claptrap. But it's some additional layering on top has, I think, really brought the game into another zone. When in fact, if you look at the new logo for Chain of Command 2, it isn't Chain of Command 2, it's Chain of Command squared, Chain of Command to the power of 2, because I just feel it's not just the next edition, it's actually taking the game somewhere else.
And that's as a result of playing so many games over the last 12 years and feedback, and also changing views as to how you want the game to look. I'm taking away from that.
Oh well, I don't know. Is it a conscious process of learning, and could we do this better? It wasn't actually. But and that's why that I do actually have the formal process of sitting down and creating a design brief, even when it's me who's doing the design. I say, are we looking to achieve from this? And it's only when I sat down and did that it brought it into focus and made me think, yeah, I don't just want to tidy up the language and make it a bit prettier. I do want to push it on to the next space. But there we are. I'm sure we'll be talking a lot about chain of command. So let's get on with the oddcast. But yeah, good.
But I think also worth saying though, Sid, to kind of
Oh,
just add a bit more depth to the answer there. Yes, feedback from people that are playing the game has really come into play. And you'll notice there are some things that are in there where ideas that came from, feedback from people that played the game across the globe and made suggestions or ideas and said this bit don't quite get that, or this bit is a great idea in the local house rules. Some of those may be in there as well. So I think that kind of there is a bit of crowdsourcing in there too. Some of those things are definitely visible in the rules.
I think as a principle, the whole Lard experiment, if you want to call it that, has always been, we've always viewed it as a collective.
Yeah.
It's very egalitarian. Nick and I are just two other blokes in the club. We're not, there's no ermine robes and coronets involved here. The only celebrity round here, Sid, is you. But that's certainly been the principle that we've adhered to when we've been developing Chain of Command 2. The people that we've had involved play testing, we've listened to them. They're not just testing our ideas, we're testing their ideas. And the people who've contributed to it in terms of providing pictures and photographs of their figures has been absolutely brilliant. It's been a complete team effort, and that has really made me feel hugely positive about the community that we're working alongside.
Well, another thing which demands a lot of team effort is setting up games, isn't it? And one of the things that we've been doing is building terrain for games as a team. So let's go to the workshop and find out all about it. And here we are. We're back at the workshop once again. And here there is a mound of sawdust on one half of the workshop, bits and pieces of styrofoam, beautifully painted terrain. And the other side of the workshop seems strangely empty, as if somebody hadn't been doing much work there at all. Richard, what's been going on here? Can you explain this mystery, Sherlock?
Yes, I've been the one in the busy half, and Nick's done a sum total of bugger all. Actually, that's a complete lie, but the opportunity was too great to slander him. Well, we've had a kind of Bill crazy time, mate, because I didn't go to Hearts of Lard that you mentioned a few minutes ago. I was due to go there and run a game of Chain of Command 2, but I got COVID. And nobody gets COVID anymore, but I got COVID. And so I couldn't go. And it's the third time I've had COVID, and I wouldn't say it was the worst, but because the symptoms, the sort of COVID-like symptoms that you expect, disappeared after about 4 or 5 days. But I was completely and absolutely exhausted the whole time. Once I emerged from that, I suddenly thought, oh my God, I go to Holland in a week and I haven't built any of the terrain that I'm meant to be taking over there. So I instantly set about building up an East Prussian village. Martin at Warbases very kindly had a look at some photographs that I had taken on Google Earth in the Kaliningrad Oblast, the artist formerly known as Königsberg. And if you go around the farming areas there, you will see villages that have not changed since 1945. Well, with the exception of the fact they're not being blown up. So I was able to go on Google Earth and screenshot loads of buildings. And Martin made me some prototype buildings, which I then, in MDF, which I was then able to stick together and very rapidly tosh up with some polyfiller. And get them done. So I built a whole East Prussian village just in time to go over to Lard, which was the week before Salute. Anyway, just as I was loading the car up, the Lard phone rang. And I thought, oh, who could this be? It's Commissioner Skinner phoning from Gotham Police HQ. And he said, I haven't built a table for Salute. I haven't done it at all. And I said, don't panic, don't panic. I'll help you build it when we get back. So Nick and I then we got some high density polystyrene and MDF, and then we set about cutting up. I cut up the terrain and basically made the ground while Nick was working frantically on the buildings. I have to say his buildings looked a lot better than my terrain, but we were able to create the ground at Lard, with the railway embankment and the road going underneath the bridge, up towards the station. And we just got that done in time. And literally, you were working on it up to the day before Salute, weren't you, Nick? So
Yeah, I was. We don't often use terrain boards. We normally try and work with a cloth because
mm,
it's a lot easier to take a cloth around. But the particular nature of the terrain there, where you do have, as Rich says, a railway line going along the long side of the table, about a foot in from the table, and there's a road that goes under the railway line at one end, and then the top of the table, you've got a railway station on the high ground there, which is level with the railway track. So it's really difficult to do that in any way other than using terrain boards. So terrain boards were the obvious solution. I mean, I have to admit, Sid, I don't know that there's any health and safety executive listening, but I don't think they should worry. Actually, I think everything was done in accordance to all health and safety. There was no dangerous cutting of any polystyrene or anything like that. No, nobody got their hands burnt using the hot whatever it's called, hot knife. There were
That's
no
good.
bits of limbs on the floor at any stage in the process. It was all done brilliantly well and without swearing either, which was remarkable.
Oh, please, come
Well,
on.
it could
You
couldn't
know,
it? You could imagine it. There could have been such profanity that you would have thought the roof would have come down. But actually, of course, there was nothing like that in the air whatsoever. It was all done with a tone of civility and generosity that you would expect from old sausage fingers over there.
well,
So,
thank you, Pinocchio. Yes, well, we
yeah,
don't need to go into all of those details too much.
uh,
Well,
but.
it looked really good when it finally came out, and nobody ever guessed, apart from all the ones that we talked to, that it had come together just in a week.
Well, it's one of those things where it's only a 6x4 table, right? And what's marvelous about using a historical table, one that's based on a real photograph, real map, the real ground itself, is that actually it's got a certain flow to it. Real terrain is quite simple. There's nothing there's nothing kind of overly. You don't get a massive hill here and then a deep valley over there. It's kind of the way that terrain flows naturally, which means that the board is looks realistic. And what we chose to do on that board was I was able to get a bridge, a rail HOOO railway bridge actually, which fitted for the underpass really nicely, and actually came ready made. I didn't realize it came ready made, but when it arrived through the post, it was already beautifully painted with the brickwork and everything. And I thought, oh, that's a shame because we're going to have to cut it in half lengthways to make it wider, which occurred without profanity, as discussed in the workshop. And then that was put in place. But the railway station was the big one because the railway station is it's a very iconic building. I mean, you can still see the Oosterbeek Lard railway station now if you go to southern Oosterbeek. So the location of the game is, you imagine a situation, Sid, where lots of British paratroopers have just landed and they're trying to take the River Road. Very famously, John Frost takes the River Road into Arnhem, and just after they failed to capture the railway bridge, which is destroyed by the Germans, they go under this underpass. And when they go under this underpass, they encounter some elements of Germans, Aufklärungs, which are pushing out from Arnhem to try and find out what routes the British are coming down. And there's an encounter here. And you can still go to that spot where it happened. And in fact, we've got a photo of the famous editor of WSS magazine standing under that railway bridge, complete with all the spang and bullet marks behind him, and graffiti, which he may have added himself, but can't be proven. So the table's really nice from that. The building is a big building. It's a big railway station, and actually, what we did, of course, was put it out to the genie, Paul Edwards, to ask for his help to turn a series of photos into a 3D print. And again, no swearing was involved, and we got from Paul a fantastic piece of terrain. Um, that's kind of simplifying a really difficult process. And I think the process of designing this one broke Paul's PC and he had to buy a new one. But the detail that we've got out at the end of it is is kind of well, it's a one-off at the moment. It's not the kind of thing. I don't know if Paul will make it available in his catalogue. But if he does, and if you're going to buy it, you're going to need 2.5 feet of table to put it on. It looks really good, really pleased with it, and goes together nicely as well. So, really well done to him. And we should give him, shouldn't we, a special shout out at the moment because he is poorly. And as we record this, he's actually sitting in hospital somewhere. So I hope you're back on your feet very soon, Paul. Thanks for your help with this. It's really appreciated.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
that's
There's actually a photograph of the Lard railway station in Chain of Command 2. And the great thing about it is Nick actually took the photo outside in his garden, and there's just enough sunshine to make it look like a real photograph of real people walking past the real building. So there's one to look out for when you get your copy of Chain of Command 2. But yeah, big shout out to our mate Paul because we don't like to see him poorly. So get yourself well soon, old son. If for no other reason than the fact I need some stuff printed.
absolutely, Paul. Hope you're very much better and back in no time. That would be great to see. It was good to see you at Salute, but hopefully many, many more times we'll be able to meet up. Well, that's enough, I think, for the workshop, maybe, unless you've got anything else, Richard, or
Yeah,
Well,
Sid,
we could talk about what we've been doing.
what about the
He might have been
bonsai
doing
bon
nothing.
what about the bonsai bonkers bathhouse that we bought you for Christmas?
well, that's that is a good question. Yeah, well, Bonsai Bonkers, according to my exciting War Games journal, we sat down at the club and we did play bonsai. We played when the last sword is drawn, excuse me, on the 15th of April, and that was a great game we had. And that is the first of a series of the smaller games. We've got Flashing Blades coming out in a couple of weeks' time at the club, featuring the arrival of the Spanish, which I know we
Ah,
entertainingly texted each other on Easter Sunday morning about.
yeah.
That conversation will remain confidential until the Spanish are revealed in their glory on the table. But yes, the bathhouse is ready. So the next time you'll be encountering the fearsome Bakuto, they will be half naked or indeed almost fully naked in the bathhouse.
Mm.
So that's almost a restrictive viewing set of photos on blue
Well, are they
sky, ladies and
half naked,
gentlemen.
half naked from the waist up or waist down, or maybe
Uh,
vertically?
You'll have to see, but many tattoos will be on display, so that will be an exciting sight for you all to enjoy. In
Just
addition,
like a normal Friday night out with you then, Sid.
Yeah. Where do you
well, we
go to
should move
research?
quickly along.
Where do you go to research these tattoos, Sid? Where do you,
Yes, I mean,
yeah.
it's the part of the design process I think needs to remain confidential.
Yes, and probably surgically privileged, whatever that means. Well, look, he might have been doing nothing because he's had COVID, but I've had a really busy painting start to the year, which for me is most rare. I've had quite a few opportunities to get stuff painted. I have painted at last my Fallschirmjäger. I've had some offensive miniatures Fallschirmjäger for years, and actually got to paint them up. So I've fully got those out with some nice jump off points as well, and supported with some 3D prints. I've got some 3D prints off eBay. I wasn't sure how well they go alongside the offensive miniatures because the offensive miniatures are quite slight in their proportioning, and some of the stuff you get 3D printed is quite kind of heroic,
Funky
isn't it?
monkey.
Yeah, and some of them don't go well together, to be absolutely truthful, but some of them are okay. There's kind of you can blend them in all right. But I'm really pleased you got those done. I'm really pleased with those. I put off painting them for so long because I really didn't want to paint that kind of German camo. And But I'm so glad I did it now. I'm really pleased with what I got from those, the effects of that. I've been doing more paras, clearing out the paras. Yes, Rich, do you want to say
I was
something?
just going to say, funnily enough, I was talking to Dave Jackson at Offensive Miniatures last night because
Mm.
we've used some of his photos of his stuff in Chain of Command too. And what a nice chap, very nice fella from my
Yeah,
home county of Cheshire as well. So
right. Yeah, no, very nice.
civilized,
Yeah, very
civilized.
nice figure.
Yeah.
Very nice figure eight. But I've been doing some more paras. I've got all those Hicks para. I'm just trying to clear stuff through. As you know, my focus is on trying to get my storage space organized, and that means actually getting rid of some stuff and taking some unpainted stuff and turning it into painted stuff so I can store it more effectively and
Hmm.
say that I've done something with it. Because if I'm not going to paint it, I might as well throw it out, right? What's the point in keeping it if I'm not going to paint it? So I'm trying to go through painting it. So I've done the paras. I've done some Baron's War stuff, some knights, which is really nice. Sort of what's the word? Distraction. I painted up some winter Germans that I had, and it's quite nice putting the old whatever it is, the bicarbonate of soda, getting that out to put on the bases for them, and getting the white on winter Germans was really interesting as well. Trying to get the white right for the winter overalls, really like that. And some jumper points to go with that too. So it's been really kind of nice for me to get painting, to get into that cycle of doing stuff. I've got some figures downstairs now, undercoated, ready to go. What are you guys undercoating with at the moment? Rich, what are you using? Because I used to use Halford's dark chocolate brown spray paint, but that's kind of disappearing now. I don't know where to go to next for my undercoat. What are you using?
It depends what I'm painting. If I'm painting, let's say Normandy Germans who were in a sort of greeny coloured uniform,
Hmm.
I will use just a car spray, black car spray that I pick up cheaply on Amazon. I used to get it from a car parts shop in locally, which is shut, but I found it just as cheap, and it's like £4 a tin. I mean, it's cheap and cheerful, but I love it. It's good. They also do grey, which if I when I did my winter troops, I used a grey. If I'm doing British or Americans or Soviets, no, not Soviets, British or Americans in brown, I would tend to go for Humbrol. I think it's called Dark Earth. I quite like that as a basis. But if I'm doing Soviets, I'll use black because I tend to paint them brown but with a greenish tinge. So that determines they get the green undercoat. But I just use cheap and cheerful spray paint. I know, Sydney, you apply enamel with a brush, don't you? Which is
Yeah,
which is
I
just mental.
well, it's not really mental when you think about it. I use enamel paints so they can be easily thinned with white spirit. So two coats of that, I think, preserves all of the detail on the figure, but it doesn't clog up the figure either. And it's a great base because it's basically waterproof. It's enamel paint. It's a great base to protect a metal figure. And also that allows the acrylic paint to really adhere well to it. So I've done that and I'm not going to change. And you can, I think with a rattle can, if you like, you can
Yeah.
spray vast numbers of troops and you just got to go back over and turn them upside down and get the other little bits. I think with experience, you can paint from a tin of enamel paint, Humble or Revel, just as quickly. I would say one thing with the Halfords, I used to be a great user of the sort of Halfords spray. I did notice on some of the figures a few years ago now that the results were a bit patchy. And then on one of the other podcasts, I think it was the Painting Phase podcast, there was a guy on there who explained all about the different consistencies of pigmentation in aerosol-based paints. And the Halford's car pigmentation is quite thick. Because you think about the size of a car,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and there are other alternatives. So a lot of people have been using Colourforge spray paint, which is popular with the sort of fancy sci-fi crowd that we know, which is a model primer. And you get those in lots of different colours, all the colours you've mentioned. And that's very popular. A bit more expensive than a car primer because you're only using it in a smaller area, but the pigmentation is much better. So I think that if I was doing anything, I might use one of those. But personally, I think that the time that you save by doing a lot of figures and then having to go over it and do them twice, it's almost better just to use a brush. And then you get precisely the right application throughout the whole of the figure. Obviously, if you're doing 10 figures, it's practical to do that. If you're doing 200 figures like Ken Riley, then you probably won't want to be doing that with a brush. But horses and courses, gentlemen.
So, Sid, this time of year, some people might be thinking about their tanning regime. So, would you go for a spray tan or would you recommend a kind of moisturized rub-in tan? What was your personal preference there?
I don't like the spray tans. I've got to say they can streak, and that's never a good look when you're by the pool or at the beach. So I much prefer tan being applied by a properly appointed sort of tanning expert, and tends to be rubbing throughout all of the exposed skin areas.
Nooks and
Richard.
crevices.
Which shade of orange do you go for?
Not as orange as a certain well-known politician, we could possibly say.
Yeah.
Something which is just a little bit more rouge than I normally am this time in the morning.
I think that's sort of Terry's chocolate orange he goes for.
I think that's right. I think that's quite well. Enough of this nonsensical banter. We have a big issue to discuss. So let's move without any more ado to the couch of contemplation.
Not the sofa of sincerity, mate.
No, 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 no. The couch of contemplation for this one, Richard.
Oh, great.
Sydney Roundward. He's got red trousers.
Sydney Roundwood, sofa of sincerity.
And we're back. And we're back. Get comfortable, gentlemen. Sit on those cushions. They're newly imported from my cushion manufacturer in Afghanistan. There we go. Well, the big issue.
Ow! Something sharp in that one. Got to get a new one, mate. Oh dear, blimey! Ow!
Masterful, masterful. Anyway, look, I think that what we've got to chat about is a really interesting big issue which comes from some of the games we've been playing. So we've had a real spate of games that all three of us have been participating in. I played a big game of Pickett's Charge about a week ago with great friend of the show, Des Darkin, Per Broden, and Ian Fuller. And we fought Heth's attack on the first day of Gettysburg. I know at the club this week we did a smaller 3mm refight of Murfreesboro in 1862. Sorry to Americans for murdering the name of that Western theatre battle. I know that we've played some smaller games over the last couple of weeks, when Last Sword is Drawn, and I know you've been playtesting games of Chain of Command 2 like crazy. Now, all of those is a really good spread of games we played in the last month. We've got some very historical games, respectfully recreated, Murfreesboro and Gettysburg being two of them. We've got some historically set but fictional background games like When the Last Sword is Drawn, and dare I say it, one of the games that we've played of Chain of Command 2. Now, all of those games have featured different objectives on the tabletop. And I know in some of the smaller games, we talked about how the objectives could be set and where they should be set. How important the objectives can be in framing the narrative of the game, the way that the players move their forces around the table. And I thought that this was a good way of saying, well, is it easier to set objectives which channel and direct wargaming for an ahistorical game, something which is set in historical theme but really is fictional, or is there just more thought needed for the big historical game objectives, and trying to maintain that tension right to the end of the game in something really which had a different kind of historical narrative and a historical cadence? And indeed, are we really getting the point wrong by setting physical objectives when what we're really after is not so much capturing the loot or exiting by a particular place? What we're really after is creating tension and excitement through the mechanisms of the game, of which the objectives are only one. So that was the big issue we've got today, guys.
What was that?
Well, were you listening, Richard, as you bagged up dice for Chain of Command 2? I think you were.
I was listening, Sid. Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Rich?
Yeah, you go first, because I need to collect my thoughts, because I don't have that very often.
I was thinking as you were speaking, Sid. I don't know why I should be thinking this as you were speaking necessarily, but I was thinking about the Cheshire Cat. Alice in Wonderland wandering along, and she finds the Cheshire Cat, doesn't she? I think I might. This is my version of the story. It might not be the audio book version. And the Cheshire Cat says to her, "Where do you want to go?" And she says, "I don't know where I want to go." And the Cheshire Cat says, "In which case, it doesn't matter what road you go down, all roads will get you to wherever you're going to go." Something like that. And it's about having an objective, isn't it? She doesn't know where she's going, so it doesn't matter what road she takes. And now in game design, it's important to know what road we want people to take. Where are we trying to get people to, both in terms of the objective of the historical outcome of the game? What's the historical objective of the game? and what we're trying to achieve in terms of that game. And if one aligns with the other one, you can get a really enjoyable, high tension, as you said, exciting game with a historically relevant objective, and all the mechanisms will build up to a point where that objective becomes bigger and bigger in the kind of in your front screen view until all of a sudden the game processes and you're playing through the game takes you to that objective. If you don't know what you're trying to achieve with the game or with the scenario, all you're going to have is a load of meaningless meanderings that you kind of get to the end of you think, well, that was interesting, but so what? Do you get what I'm trying to say?
I do. And one of the questions with a historical game where you're trying to recreate a specific battle from history, not just a generic sort of American Civil War battle, but you are deliberately trying to recreate a battle in history. One of the questions is, to what extent does that attempt to get to an objective fit or somehow press out the accuracy of the battle that you're trying to recreate? Can you, in other words, make a really exciting game out of every historical engagement, every precise historical engagement, Richard?
Well, I think that's a very big question, isn't it? I think one of the things you got to look at is what is the purpose of the objective. So, you could have an objective which is an historical objective in a scenario. So, the French are attacking in a Napoleonic battle, the objective is to capture the bridge. Now, in that case, what you need to consider is the bridge capturable in terms of where the bridge is placed on the table, because that will hugely affect gameplay. And you also really need to consider is if you want to capture a bridge, do you have to capture the bridge? Can you capture those two tall buildings very close to the bridge, which holding them will dominate the ground completely with any fire? And that actually means the objective realistically is not to stand on the bridge and capture it, but the objective is to dominate the bridge sufficiently so that the enemy cannot stop you capturing it or cannot use it. So they're two slightly different things. And I think one of the things that we do when we design scenarios often is to say, well, the objective is the bridge, so the objective is the bridge. Well, you need to just think a little bit more about that, because there's more than one way to skin a cat. But also the other thing is the objective actually about a historical objective, or is it an objective which is set artificially to drive play in a certain manner? An objective maybe that will encourage people to pull their finger out and get a move on, rather than sit there and just shoot at each other from long range, which is tedious. I mean, I've had people say to me, oh, yeah, when I play Chain of Command, it dissolves into a shooting match. I line up behind a hedge and my opponent lines up behind a hedge. Well, of course you can do that with Chain of Command, but it isn't good tactics. And if you did that historically, somebody would be coming down on you like a ton of bricks saying, move your ass. And I think, when I'm designing a set of rules, you have to allow people to make the wrong choices. You can't just demand that they make the choices that you think are correct. So sometimes the scenario can actually oblige them to make choices that make the game more interesting and dynamic. So there's two types of objectives: a purely physical one, which is driven by a historical narrative, or one which is almost arbitrary and you can put it anywhere you like, because it then determines how the game is played.
I think it's the question of why again, isn't it? Why is this action happening? What brings these armies, these platoons, these bands of brigands, whatever it might be in your on your tabletop, what brings them to this location for this action? What brings them to this theatre of operation? And that there's kind of thinking about that. Yes, physical objectives, but there's also physical objective being the bridge, as Richard said, or the high ground. There's also the motivational objective, isn't there? What brings them to want to fight the other side, to want to push? What brings them to commit to that push of pike? Is it because they want to capture the bridge, or is it because they're trying to manipulate some kind of I don't know, political leverage as well. It's the war by politics by other means, isn't it? Aspect of it. Why are they there? Why does it matter? If there's no why does it matter, then you will get that sit behind a wall and shoot at each other because it's part of the nature of the gamers and also the historical storyline as well, isn't it?
I mean, all of those elements, those physical elements, those political, economic rather, motivational elements go together as regards why certain things are happening. And then mechanically, the scenario and the rules go together to turn those motivations into good objectives. And hopefully those objectives are objectives which are interesting, which make a fun game, which build towards tension in a game, as opposed to the tension being halfway through the game and then things fizzle out, albeit that's perfectly historically plausible, as one side has fought and halfway through the game then decides the better part of the choice is to retire onto supply lines. But those motivations go together to make the mechanisms for the game, for the scenario, Richard, I think.
Yeah, I think that an interesting point here is we played Bonsai Bonkers the other week at the club, and it was great fun. And one of the things that people won't know about Bonsai Bonkers unless they've had a chance to play it at one of the Lardy Games days is that it's got a really lovely combat mechanism. And it's great fun to get stuck into combat because the dice manipulation rule that Sid has created there is really fun to game with. It's really interesting and really good fun. And of course, so what happens? Sid writes this beautiful scenario based on something that happened in some ridiculous piece of Japanese history. And he's done all the detail and he's got these people gambling in an old disused shrine. And we were the magistrate and his men, and we had to go on and go down there and tell them to stop messing about in the shrine and go home with their bottles of gin. And but we didn't do that. We got on the table and we had a punch up in a pub car park because it was far more fun to have a punch up than to bother reading the objectives and doing that bit. So in that situation, what you need to do, and this is something that we've discussed in the wash up afterwards, what you need to do is create objectives on the table that stop me behaving like an objectionable thug and just going in and bashing people over the head with a baseball bat, and make me actually do something on the table and make me move about. So there's a very key case there for saying the objectives need to be intertwined into the game mechanism. So part of that is doing some key things. You make sure the objectives are achievable. What you can't do, even on an 18-inch square board, you can't have an objective over in the far corner right next to Sydney's deployment point, because I'll just go, oh, there's no way I can get to that. I'm not going to bother. The only way I can get to that is by completely destroying all of Sydney's force. So what we'll do is we'll have a punch up in the car park because I like that bit best. So you need to put your objectives near or thereabouts the center of the table, or maybe you need to present rewards that people gain when they seize an objective, so they have an incentive. So maybe when I seize the objective as a samurai or a ronin, I, for a very brief period, go, I've got the power and I'm all powerful because I'm buoyed up by my success in grabbing the kettle of doom or whatever it is, or the underpants of Shih Tzu or whoever it could be. And then I go, ha, and like Power Rangers, you get a bit of a boost. And then you bash somebody over the head because now's the moment to do it. And that takes you on towards the next objective because you have that surge of energy.
You can have an objective. It's really important to have the objective. And what I've just scribbled down here when you said that, Rich, is actually what's just as important, because an objective on its own is a dream, it's a wish, it's over there, it's kind of so what. What you've got to have is the pathway to it. The pathway to achieving the objective must be apparent to the player. So how do I get to do that? And that's not just about, advancing to that hedge and then to that building and then to the bridge. It's not just the physical pathway, it's the game pathway to achieving that objective. What do I need to do to defeat my opponent? Which is why, for instance, in Chain of Command, when you've got the negative things, bad stuff happens, you know that you can attrit your opponent's force morale, then you know that there's things you need to do to achieve your overall objective. You're not going to kill him instantly in one go. What you are going to do is whittle him away here, whittle him away there, defeat his units, focus on one part of the battlefield at a time that moves you each step, like a phase, if you like, each step closer to your objective.
Yeah, one of the things we've added in Chain of Command 2 is the ticking clock. In
Yeah.
some scenarios, the defender who's holding an objective can play a whole chain of command dice to take a point off his opponent's force morale. And that's because those troops are going, what the hell's happening? Why are we sat here involved in a firefight? We're trying to take that objective, but it just means you're never going to reduce your opponent's force morale completely by using chain of command points. But it does mean that you are prodding your opponent to needle them. There's a psychological warfare, psyops side to it. Grabbers, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I mean those aspects relating to locations of objectives, how objectives are working, very much was part of the inspiration for this big issue. But then there's the question in my own mind as to whether creating those gaming pathways, creating those objectives which are intertwined with the different motivations of the combatants on the table, is that easier in a game which isn't precisely set in a historical battle? So we talked about Chain of Command, which could be a really historical battle, but isn't always. It's often historically themed, accurate, and respectful, but it's not always a precise moment in history we're trying to create when the last sword is drawn. Likewise, try to create an incident from 17th century Edo, which I'd read about, but it could obviously be historically themed in a fictional location. But what about actual historical battles? First day of Gettysburg, first day of Mars-le-Tour, whichever battle you're fighting, is it as easy to create those objectives when the combatants themselves might have had different objectives which might not be quite as exciting as the objectives that you want to create mechanistically, Nick?
Well, with Gettysburg, I'm a bit sketchy, but isn't the first encounter at Gettysburg something to do with shoes? Don't they go in and they're looking for shoes in the shoe warehouse or something? Doesn't it kind of? I don't know. I could be wrong, but battles can escalate from small things, can't they? So small units can go out, and the objective of this small unit is to capture the shoe factory. And next thing you know, it encounters a bit of enemy troops or whatever, who might also be out to capture the shoe factory. And then a small action will start from there. Big oaks of battles do from small acorn encounters grow, right?
That's very true. Yeah, no, that's very true. And there's different elements which you could look at in each battle at each different stage of the battle, and you could create different objectives based on different games with parts of the battle or the whole battle or just one side of the battle. Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, that's totally fair, isn't it? We've done that any number of times. I sometimes think that it's just slightly easier to do it with when you feel that you can have more largesse and more flexibility to be able to set those objectives when you're not precisely trying to create a moment in history or recreate a moment in history, Richard.
Hang on, Rich. Sid,
Cool.
hang on, Sid. I just Googled this. I said shoe factory at Gettysburg. I put it into Google. The first thing that comes up, it says one popular myth suggests that the Battle of Gettysburg occurred because the Confederates were searching for shoes. However, there was no shoe factory or warehouse in Gettysburg. So before I get buried in 400,000 emails telling me what a fool I am, I'll admit what a fool I am. But there's a story behind the first action.
Richard, you were interrupted by
I
the
was
shoe
just going to
story.
say, you said that doing a game in a imaginary fantasy made up setting potentially gives you an easier ride when it comes to setting objectives. I would counter that and say, if you're doing something from a historical background, somebody's set the objectives for you already. So maybe it's slightly easier if you're doing something from a historical background. But as I say, think about what do you have to do in order to achieve that objective? Do you actually have to stand on it, or can you dominate it by other means? And is simply stopping your opponent accessing it a victory in itself, where you don't actually have to? It's not like a pot of gold that you have to grab hold of. There's gold in them there hills.
And also the rules which we have played or designed and are playing at the moment, they have different ways to create that tension, the clock, the force morale, other sort of mechanisms which are embedded within the rules or the scenario, other than just the objective, which I think is a very relevant point,
And the
Nick.
objective can be a rolling thing, right? So you can have an objective, your first objective. What happens when you've achieved that? Do you all go home? No, there's another objective that
Yeah.
follows on from that. And sometimes you can build that into the game. So we play some commando games, Rich, so first objective is to get into the secret base. Second objective is to plant the explosives. Third objective is to get out. And there's kind of a game around each part of that, if you like, for those, each part of that gaming process has to have slightly different mechanisms because the priorities shift and towards the for that game as well, like that. And here's another question for you then, Sid. Let me fire one back at you. Yeah, if I've it does the game end with this with that objective? Then can I secure my objective and still lose a game?
Well, it depends on your victory conditions. So that in the smaller games that we're playing, it's not just a force morale track, but there's an honor track. So you win the game by having more honor accumulated over the game than the opponent. So yeah, you can lose the objective because that's just one of the metrics of winning the game, Richard.
I think there's the other question. Yeah, you can capture the objective, but can you hold it? This is something I've talked about before, where it's all very well running a medic up the road and going, "Hooray, I've stood on the objective, I've won." But it's bollocks, isn't it? Really,
Well, that's the classic, isn't it? You got to get a unit off the far table edge to win. Well, what? So I've got two blokes off there with a donkey full of
Thank you, mate. I
cannons.
think that was the one I designed. But
But the rest of the army's been annihilated, but you've got your wagon off the far end. How can that possibly be a victory?
Well, I mean, we've played loads of games like that where where the American Indians are chasing the wagon, and you go, "Hey, I've got it off the table. All the cavalry are dead, but I've got the wagon off the table." That rather ignores the fact that if the table was 6 inches longer,
Yes.
that would be literally not just game over, but everything's over in the next minute. But it doesn't matter because I won the game. It's a bit silly, really, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where the objective becomes dominant, but not really historically plausible in its dominance. Well, that's been a very good discussion. Anything else just to wrap up on that before we move towards the end of the show? Or have we've done that to death?
I think we can talk about something that's happening, can't we, Nick? We've been having discussions over the last few months about, and what really kicked it off was the whole Twitter blue sky thing. I mean, I was finding Twitter just was becoming a bit mental, and I was getting all sorts of cobblers through on my thread every morning, and so I'm still on Twitter, but I'm spending more time on Blue Sky. And Nick's on Twitter, but he's not on Blue Sky. And we were saying, wasn't it easier when we just had a Yahoo group and everybody was on the Yahoo group and we all talked, and we had thousands upon thousands of members on the Yahoo group, and everybody just talked about anything they wanted. One minute you could be answering a rules question, and the next minute you could be talking about what you had for lunch. And it was a lot easier to get the message out to people when we were trying to tell them what was going on and what was happening then than it is now, because everything is shattered into 1,000 shards. And some people are off on Instagram, and some people are off on Twitter, and some on Blue Sky, and some on Facebook, and some on God knows what. A Discord is a huge thing. So we've been thinking and talking about how to establish a Lardy community in one place where people know where we are if they want to find us. Because I literally, I employ somebody to go through the forums and tell me what's being said, because I can't. I'm not, despite some claims, I'm not omnipresent, um, and it's there's so many different places to hang out now, and I've been unable to split myself into those 1,000 pieces to do it, and same with Nick. So we,
Yeah, I found that that's really important because you can't possibly be across all platforms, can you?
no, no,
And yes, I was finding this again at Salute. People were saying to me, "Oh, did you see this on that Facebook group, or did you
yeah,
see this on?" And there's a load of really good stuff I feel like I'm missing out on. And somebody was saying to me about some water tanker stuff that was going on online, and I thought, wow, I'd love to know about that. I mean, I wrote the bloody rules. It'd be great to be able to see that and be able to celebrate and say, well, look at that. That was great. What really nice to be part of that, but just can't see it because it's hidden somewhere else in these million different platforms. And so, yeah, we've been thinking about what a solution or an approach to retaining, restoring, rebuilding a community might look like for us.
hmm,
And I think hopefully we're quite close to getting something worked out on that. We've got some ideas that we're going to
yeah,
knock about early next week, actually.
In the very early days, we had a forum, didn't we? I mean, I remember
yeah. That was
this
it.
was almost at the same time as Yahoo, and then
Yeah.
I think Yahoo groups got closed, but there was a Lard forum, Rich, for quite a long time.
That
People used to
that
go
was
on.
the Yahoo group. That
Yeah.
was the Two Fat
Was it?
Lardies Yahoo,
Well, it still
and it
kind of exists.
became. It's still kind of there as IO groups, which
Yeah.
took over from Yahoo groups. But I haven't been on there forever and a day, just simply because I can't. If I have my phone set up to get a notification every time somebody posts on a Facebook page which is pertinent to our rules, I wouldn't get any work done. It'd just be going all day long.
So what I think the situation is, Sid, is we started off with that small acorn, that small little growth through that forum, and then as other platforms have become available, the bush of lard, the tree of lard, has grown and it's grown outwards, and the various different strands and branches have reached out like that. What I feel we now need to do is to be a bit of the botanist, being a bit of the gardener. We need to tie some of those branches together a bit so that we can cross-pollinate much more effectively between those groups and we can get some lovely flowers on the community that we can all enjoy.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And it is
Yes.
indeed the time of year to be doing husbandry in one's garden. So yeah, that's not a bad project for this summer. We'll have to see how how well we can tether everything together with stakes and bits of wire.
Are you a hunter or a gatherer, Sid?
That's a very good question. Quite a personal question as well in some respects. I think I'm a gatherer. I think I'm naturally a gatherer as opposed to a hunter.
Right.
But
Okay.
yeah. Well, enough of that bucolic reminiscing and thoughts. I think that's probably certainly the end of the couch of contemplation for this particular issue, which we've really explored quite well. So, chaps, before we sign off, let's go through our diaries and see what's coming up in the wonderful world of Lard. Richard, kick us off, please.
Well, literally kicking off tomorrow. I'm off to Derby to go to a fabulous and inaugural Midgard event, the Midgard Moot, which is at Boards and Swords in Derby, which I have not been to before. So I'm really looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to seeing all the guys there, and I'm actually there as your roving correspondent. I'll be there with microphone and camera in hand to bring you news of all the action on Lard TV. So it'll be my debut as a pure journalist for the event. So I've got all my kit ready. I've got my microphones. I've got my camera. So yeah, that's the first thing for me. Really exciting. What about you, Sid? What have you got coming up, mate?
Well, I think the next exciting outing is probably, just looking at my diary, is probably going to be Partisan on the 18th of May. The football season is over, and my tenure as lead coach for Weath Hampstead Wanderers under-18s Tigers is at an end because my son's doing his A-levels and hopefully be going to university in the autumn. So I will not be doing another football season coaching. So I'm free to go to Partizan. Free
You've
of
been
shackles.
sacked. You've been
Yeah.
sacked, haven't you? They've pinned you.
I've been so keen for them to sack me for about 11 years.
What are your stats as a manager, Sid?
That's a really good one. I haven't looked. I dread to think.
Who would you compare yourself with? Are you a Brian Clough or what? Who, Alex Ferguson? That looks like you've had the hairdryer treatment, but
I think probably some hopeless non-league manager. Who knows? Everyone who's a football, soccer for our American cousins, anyone who's a football stroke soccer fan will probably have a team and they've probably got a useless manager at some point. So I'm probably in the useless manager category, but who knows? We've had a few wins, we've had a few losses, but over the time, the boys have had a great time and they've met a load of friends, which is the main point, isn't it, of a sport, as you would say, Rich?
no. The main point of sport is to win.
I thought it was beer.
Oh,
No.
yeah, all right.
Let's rewind to that bit. Anyway, so Partizan,
To
and
have the
after
beer, you've got to win. Yeah.
And don't forget at Partizan, you can get your Partizan, get your mitts on my bits bundle. I'm keeping that name. I love it. So if you want a bit of chain of command, you've got to be careful what you say here. If you want a bit of chain of command action, Partizan is the place to turn up in person and grab them. And Emma will be running the trade stand and I will be there distributing chain of command like loaves and fishes. So
Yeah, and I'll be there too because Partizan, of course, has the best bacon sandwiches on the circuit. So I would not be missing a trip to Partizan because I'll be looking forward to that.
and we've
So it'd
got
be
an
good to come.
all-star cast running the game, haven't we? You're heading an all-star cast, right? It's like the Harlem Globetrotters of wargaming, isn't it? We got Stormzy. And,
We have in fact, yeah, I don't know who it is though, Rich. So I don't know who signed up and who isn't now. Who's got their arm up their back this time?
we've got Stormzy, Alex Storm of Steel. We got his mate Disco Dex. We've got Little Aid Deacon. We've got I can't remember all the names. I mean, it's a cast of thousands, or at least four.
and many of the members of that cast of thousands will then, only a couple of weeks afterwards, be reuniting in best boy band K-pop fashion for Operation Market Lard number 11, I think, in Evesham on the 7th of June, Saturday, 7th of June. Many of us are staying over on the Friday night as well as the Saturday night to get the full Evesham experience. And that's going to be great. I am not running a game this year, which is nice. I decided I would prefer to play. I'm looking forward to playing some of the fantastic games everyone else is doing. But I think you're putting on a game, aren't you, Rich?
Yeah, so there's a thread here. You've been sacked as a football manager. You've been sacked as a game host. I mean, what's next, Sid? I mean, Nick, do you think we ought to be looking elsewhere for a new host of the Oddcast? Things come in threes, Sid.
Yeah, maybe we should think about that, Rich, when we're thinking about our community project.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
maybe we should get a new gardener.
Well, there you go. There you go, listeners. Your chance to replace me, and finally I could escape these two dead weights.
I would say to people, Sid, that to just say again what Richard has said. So it's always worth saying something again if it's important. And the important thing is, nice idea to put in an advanced order if you want it for Partizan, because you can pick up Chain of Command 2 before the rest of the world gets their hands on it. So I really suggest that people take advantage of that offer.
Yeah, and advance orders, just to remind you, are going to be up on the 5th or 6th of May. And remember that it's not just through TooFatLardies. You can go to Caravanserai Publishers in the Netherlands if you are in the joyful European Union. You can go to Age of Glory Historical Miniatures if you are in the United States or North America or all of America generally. I had a chat with them, and they're going to be running. Those guys are going to be running the bundles as well. And you can go to Battlefield Accessories Down Under in Melbourne, and they're going to be doing the bundles as well. So we're there wherever you need us. This time, we've really listened to people because postage has become a huge issue, and we've got a great team on side with us. I've had meetings with all of them. They all know the schedules, and the big day is going to be the 28th of May, which is when you're going to get your hands on all the bundles. So that's where they're going to be going out. So yeah, exciting times.
It's not just the rules, is it, Rich? There's other stuff that.
Oh man, there's other stuff. We've got all the usual stuff. We've got chain and different bundles. We've got chain of command dice. We've got jump off points. We've got the patrol markers and jump off points and objective marker sets. We've got the new force morale trackers, which I'm actually picking up from the printer in about half an hour's time. And we've got the all new token sets. Now, if you played Chain of Command a lot, you've probably already got the jump off points. You've probably already got the dice. So you're going to be going for the veteran resupply bundle, which is, or some such thing, which is just going to have stuff that that wasn't in the original bundle. So that's definitely going to be the tokens, the force morale trackers. If you are looking for you're new to Chain of Command and you say, hey, I want the whole lot to get me up and playing straight away, then you'll get the whole bundle. And I think we're going to do a rules only bundle, but I'm not sure when that's going to be available either. It's not really a bundle, is it? It's just the rules. And here's some fresh air. But we are going to be making the PDF available. I'm not sure if that's going to be free this time. It might be at a nominal charge if you want the rules and the PDF, because sadly we live in a world of pirating, and I've been advised by anti-pirating people that if I give people something for free, they think they can give it to their friends for free because it's free. Whereas if they pay for it, even if it's a nominal couple of quid, they apparently aren't so likely to pirate it. You never know. It's a constant fight on the seven seas against the piracy in the world of wargaming.
Well, on that note, we've got a lot to look forward to. Hopefully, we won't be pirated along the way to our destination. Well, it now remains just to, again, wish all the best to Paul Edwards in hospital. Stay well, mate. But to wish everyone who's been listening, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening, turning in, tuning in. And that's probably goodbye from me and goodbye from the other two as well.
Aren't we allowed to say it ourselves this time?
No.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. See ya.
And we'll have Roger Barraclough play us out as ever. Take it away, Roger.
In tonight's show, Sydney Roundwood is joined by Nicholas Skinner and Richard Clark. Music by Roger Barraclough and his band.